Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today. Emily Stile, co-founder with Peggy McIntosh of the National Seeking Educational Equity and Diversity Project at Wellesley Centers for Women, known as SEED, published a paper in 1988 titled Curriculum as Window and Mirror, in which she used the metaphor of curriculum both as a window through which we see the experiences of others and as a mirror to find our own reflections. If we look and listen to others, we may be surprised when their window becomes our mirror. SEED is as much about curriculum as it is about using our life story as a vehicle for teaching and learning. To set the stage, I invite you to look through my window to one specific date, June 6th. June 6th, 1944, D-Day, or the débarquement. My father in the 317th Infantry Regiment, part of the 80th Infantry Division known as Blue Ridge Division, was on his way across the Atlantic and would land on Utah Beach after D-Day to join General Patton on the march through France to the Battle of the Bulge and beyond. My mother, a teenager in Metz, France, wrote in her diary that day, "Les Américains sont arrivés. La liberté arrivera bientôt." Even though it would not be until December 1944 that the Allies would liberate Metz. After VE Day, my mother, an interpreter for the Allied forces, met my father as assigned to the Kaserne to process prisoners of war in 1946. They married in 1947 and transferred to Frankfurt, Germany, where I was born. June 6, 1948. Early morning, a Liberty-class troop ship sailed into New York Harbor in sight of the Statue of Liberty. My mother wrote with tears streaming down her face. She cried out, "Liberté, me voilà." Liberty, here I am. 4 years after leaving America's shores as a young man out of high school, my father returned as a career soldier with his French wife and me to America that had changed. Soldiers moved frequently. My childhood was notable for always being the new kid in school, whether in Salzburg, Austria, or Columbus, Ohio. I learned that the word foreigner designated those of us who were born outside the USA or whose parents spoke with an accent. I also learned that everyone has a story. I became an avid reader and entered the world of books. My parents trooped us to every historic monument within driving range of any Army base. My window frame was set. June 6, 1982. I am seated in a school auditorium in Wuhan, China, being honored at an assembly of 1,200 students, while at Columbus Academy, they were conducting closing ceremonies honoring the retirement of Martha Wood, head of lower school and my mentor. June 6, 2012. I ended a 42-year teaching career, ready for my own débarquement after sharing these reflections at today's assembly. The concept of honors, awards, and trophies is simple yet problematic. It is an ancient method designed to reward military conquests or feats of athleticism. Awards can be based on specific objective evidence, as in athletic competitions, with times and photo finishes. Witness this year's amazing track team. They can be based on verdicts of juries in courts of law or artistic events. They can be based on a combination of objective and subjective criteria in academics. There is a certain suspense that surrounds the Nobel Prize, the Academy Awards, the Grammy Awards, the Columbus Academy Awards. Audience members listen to descriptions of awards, followed by a description of the recipient and their naming. It is not uncommon for audience members to believe that they are the soon-to-be named recipients. However, when the words "and the winner is" are pronounced, and the name is not the one wishfully inserted. There was disconnect. Who? How? Why? All the while congratulating the recipients. The process of selecting recipients for most awards and honors is difficult. There is more than one eligible recipient, but tradition dictates that only one may be chosen. There can be only one Best Picture, one Best Actor, one Best Musical Score, one Nobel Prize for Peace. Let us look closer at this event using windows and mirrors. This new way of looking at curriculum was very important to me because Columbus Academy was just beginning its transition from an all-boy, not very diverse school to a co-ed, more diverse school. Whose voices are missing in the halls, in literature, in the arts and sciences? In those days, that meant girls. Fast forward to the first co-ed senior class in the tradition of awards. Imagine the entire faculty from kindergarten through upper school assembled in one room. Awards are granted on behalf of the entire faculty, so comments from lower school through upper school teachers were equally valued. Some awards became two, others remained one. Emotions ran high, tradition was invoked. The meeting lasted for hours. Finally, majority decisions were reached. The process has been tweaked and streamlined since then, but this event remains a tradition. Did the view through the window change? Yes, and it continues to change. The view through the window revealed differences in ways of knowing, of learning, and of expression. Faculty see their own differences in the reflections. Is it important to limit honors, or is it important to celebrate the kaleidoscope of reflections that represent our diversity and our school's mission? The role of the Director of Diversity since co-education has been to assist Columbus Academy in looking through windows. Let me explain this by relating it to biology. Pearls are formed when a particle is inserted under the mantle of a mollusk. The mollusk covers its irritation with layers of nacre, eventually forming a precious pearl. The shape of the pearl depends on the shape of the particle. Ms. Hamler and her predecessors, Dr. Judy Carl and Mrs. Kay Mason, provided particles that cause us to itch and squirm. Faculty and students working together over the years produce the layers of understanding. I need to mention specific teachers as I explain the stages of development of the pearl. Everything we really need to know occurred in kindergarten. But wasn't it wonderful that Ms. Boaz opened the window to let young minds see outside of the classroom, see her as a master teacher who raises sheep, spins and dyes their wool, knits and grows vegetables? Their view of the interconnectedness of nature and their world adds a layer to the pearl. Mrs. Livingston's mathematical mind looks for patterns whether teaching tessellations in middle school or the beauty of quilts she creates while teaching youngsters. Patterns teach us about the ever, never-changing world. The concentric layers of the pearl continue to build around the central particle. Mrs. Mosenter adds the layers of understanding our place in the world by having fifth graders read, investigate, and invite guests to share their immigrant stories. Mr. Tong's layer challenges students to expand their understanding of the world by looking at the stories of strangers from a different shore, human rights, and global justice. The pearl is nearly complete. Mr. Jones and Mrs. Haywood use their insights into the many types of students to find the best fit in the college admission process. And Mr. Dobbenmeyer models the truth of answering his personal calling to leave CA to continue his story in Africa as the outer lustrous layer of the pearl. You students of the upper school represent the pearls of Columbus Academy. Each one of you is deserving of praise and respect for the layers of learning and understanding that you added to the central particle that defines who you are. It is my hope that as the awards are announced and the recipients of this year's awards are embraced for their accomplishments, but they will also embrace the accomplishments of their classmates, whose windows offered them insight and reflections. And as Columbus Academy enters its second century, I hope that the definition of honors and awards will continue to evolve. Thank you.